For anyone who's involved in the music industry, there is no greater award you can win than a Grammy Award. The Grammy Awards have been given out since 1959, and they have this enormous tradition and respect amongst people within the musical industry. But in 1990, it went completely haywire. For the first time and only time in the history of the Grammys, an award that was given out was within 12 months' time taken back. And the award was given to a new artist called Milli Vanilli, two singers named Fab Morvan and Rob Pilatus. These two men were from Germany, Munich. They were great dancers. They had good looks. They had a great stage presence. But as the producer got these two men together, he realised that their voices weren't that great. So what the producer started doing was grabbing two other voices to record over the top of theirs. And the two guys from Milli Vanilli initially thought this would only be for one or two songs, and then eventually their real voices would come onto the album. But what happened was they became instant success. When their music videos were produced and their songs released, they completely hit the airwaves and it just sold millions. And as a result, the instant success now meant that Milli Vanilli were trapped. The producer made the decision that they would simply keep recording the two voices over theirs, and Milli Vanilli would now have to lip sync continually at concerts and accept that this is the way it was going to be with their albums from now on. The hope was no one would find out, but they did. Later on, the term Milli Vanilli became associated with scams, or it became associated with fakeness. It also became the source of many popular jokes for a long period of time. But Milli Vanilli was a symptom of a much bigger problem that's been emerging in our society. Scams have been on the increase on such an enormous level as technology has been increasing. Everyone's been used to getting an email at some point or a phone message which we know is not real anymore. We see through it. We see the fakeness. We see the scam. We've had to learn that, because if we don't learn that, we're going to get taken for a ride. But the problem with all this is this has also increased cynicism and mistrust in our society. So when you've got legitimate charities now trying to seek resources or support, they get swamped with all these other scams and they're battling to find their own credibility. And in the middle of all these scams and people saying things which aren't true, Jesus has something to say. And he says this in Matthew chapter 5. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all by heaven, for it is God's throne, or by earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply your yes be yes, and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. Jesus' teaching here is addressing a culture that's not much unlike ours. The time of Christ had scams going on left, right and centre. It was commonplace to go to a market and be scammed on a price or be scammed on a product. It was commonplace to have a tradesman make a promise to you that they'd fulfill a job, but then they don't do it. It was commonplace to be ripped off on your taxes. So scams were happening on a very large level. And the way that people looked to overcome the scams was trying to make a promise or an oath. The idea is that when I said to you, I will do something to promise that I'm not scamming you, I will attach an oath to it. I promise on heaven, or I promise on the temple, or a promise on a piece of land. Because there was a religious connection with the people there, the idea of connecting their promise to something that was of a religious value sort of added to their credibility. Jesus then takes this teaching and culture of oaths and he flips the whole thing on its lid. He says, you've heard that it was said that making oaths are good, but Jesus says, in fact, it's the opposite. Don't make any oath at all. Just let your yes be yes and your no be no. Now, in itself, it sounds like Jesus is really just saying, be someone of your word. No, it's much more than that. Jesus says that when someone is part of a scam or lies to someone else or makes a promise that they don't intend to fulfill, that person is emulating evil. Jesus' words, simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. People who continually make broken promises are people you need to be very careful about because they are emulating evil. And Christ is calling his followers to not be like those people, to separate from them and be someone of your word, someone who speaks truthfully from the heart. Otherwise, you may well become a puppet of the evil one. At the end of 1990, when Milli Vanilli were brought into a press conference with over 100 press interviewers there, they were drilled with questions about how did this all happen? How did you guys get caught up in this scam? And these two men who were very brokenhearted as they were being interviewed explained their journey and said, we got trapped in this whole web. We didn't intend to get involved with this. And there was a telling point when one of the interviewers asked the two men, how did it feel like in the end to know how it all ended up? And one of them said, it felt like we made a deal with the devil.